Okay, so today we're going deep on something pretty cool, I think.
Oh, yeah.
From the world of watches, you know.
Always a good place to be.
Yeah, and you flagged this article for me
I did.
about this new Seiko that's coming out, the Prospex Marinemaster Professional Titanium SLA081.
Hmm.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but it's creating some buzz online, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of dig into it with you, especially considering, Seiko's kind of history of making dive watches.
Yeah, well, and especially, this year is the 60th anniversary of Seiko's first dive watch.
That's right. Yeah, 1965.
So this is a big year for them, and this is a pretty big release, it seems like.
It is. It is. And I think to fully appreciate it, we need to go back to that 1965 watch and,
Right.
and really understand what it was and what it meant for the company.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock back to 1965. What did that original Seiko diver look like?
Well, in 1965, Seiko released what they called the 62 MAS, and the article refers to it as the mother of all upcoming aquatic watches from the brand. This was Japan's first purpose-built dive watch.
Oh.
So really a landmark achievement for Seiko.
And that's pretty interesting considering that some of the Swiss brands had been making dive watches for a while at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Seiko was a little bit late to the game. The article mentions like 12 years after some of those early pioneers like Blancpain and Zodiac and, of course, Rolex.
Right.
But when they entered with a splash, I guess you could say, and the 62 MAS really set the stage for everything that was to come from Seiko.
So what were some of the key features of that watch that made it so special?
Well, the 62 MAS reference, 62 represented 80 or 801, had a number of really forward-thinking features for its time. It was an automatic watch. It had the caliber 67 movement. It had 150 meters of water resistance.
Right.
The case was a 38 millimeter monoblock design, meaning that the mid case and the lugs were all formed from a single piece of metal.
Oh, so it's still very strong.
Yeah, inherently very strong.
Right.
And the lugs were integrated, meaning they flow smoothly from the case itself rather than being separate pieces.
Oh, okay.
Visually, it had a dark gray dial with big luminous markers and hands for legibility,
Makes sense.
and a 60-minute bezel for timing dives, although that bezel initially was bidirectional.
Oh, a bidirectional bezel. Now that seems counterintuitive.
It does now, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, back then it might have seemed convenient, to be able to quickly set it in either direction.
Right.
But obviously a unidirectional bezel is much safer because it can only be accidentally moved to indicate a shorter dive time.
Right. You don't want to think you have more air than you actually do.
Exactly. That's the fail-safe design.
Right.
But even with that early bezel design, the 62 MAS was so influential that
Right.
the article talks about how you can still see echoes of that design in many of Seiko's modern dive watches.
Yeah, and the 62 MES wasn't just important for Seiko's designs. It also kind of played a role in the bigger picture of dive watches, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The article mentions how Seiko was instrumental in developing the ISO 6425 standard for dive watches, which are those internationally recognized standards that define what a dive watch actually is.
Right.
So, the 62 MAS wasn't just a great watch in its own right. It really helped to shape the entire industry.
So it's like the granddaddy of all of these, tough tool watches we have now.
In many ways it is, yeah. And that brings us to today, this new Marinemaster, the SLA081. This is a direct celebration of that 60-year anniversary.
Okay, so let's dive into this new Marinemaster, the SLA081. It's being touted as the new king of dive watches at Seiko. Pretty bold statement.
It is a bold statement, yeah. But when you look at the specs and the design, I think it starts to make sense.
Okay.
The article describes it as bold and ultra-technical, and it's part of the Marinemaster collection, which is already Seiko's high-end dive watch line.
Okay.
Now, design-wise, it's actually modeled after the 1968 high-beat 300-meter diver 61597001, which Seiko fans might remember was reissued a few years ago as the SLA025.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's not a direct throwback to the 62 MAS, but it's still drawing on Seiko's heritage.
That's right. It's taking inspiration from another iconic Seiko diver, and it's also incorporating technology from a third iconic model, the 1975 tuna can diver.
So this is like a real Frankenstein's monster of Seiko dive watch history in a good way.
Exactly. It's taking the best elements of Seiko's past and combining them into something totally new.
So let's talk specs. The article mentions that it's 45.3 millimeters in diameter and 16 millimeters thick. That's a pretty substantial watch.
It is. It's definitely not a small watch.
Right.
But Seiko has done a few things to kind of mitigate that bulk.
Okay, like what?
Well, first of all, the case is made of titanium, which is very lightweight.
Right.
And it's also coated with this super hard coating, which makes it extremely scratch resistant.
So it's big, but it's not heavy, and it's not going to get all dinged up easily.
Exactly.
Okay, and the case construction itself is pretty interesting, right? It's a one-piece titanium case with 600 meters of water resistance, suitable for saturation diving. What does one-piece case even mean?
So imagine this picture, the entire watch case as one solid chunk of metal.
Wow.
No separate case back, no separate bezel, just one incredibly strong piece of titanium.
So there are fewer points where water could potentially get in.
Exactly. It makes the watch incredibly water resistant and also just very strong overall.
Right, and the article mentions that the movement is actually accessed from the top of the watch.
Yeah, that's right. There's no traditional case back, so the movement is encased from the front, which further adds to the structural integrity of the watch.
Okay, and there's this L-shaped gasket that's borrowed from the 1975 tuna. Can you explain what that's all about?
Sure. So when divers are working at great depths for long periods of time, they often breathe a gas mixture that contains helium.
Okay.
And helium molecules are so tiny, they can actually permeate the seals of a regular watch case.
Wow.
And when the diver comes back up to the surface, that helium expands rapidly and it can actually damage the watch.
Oh, so you need a way to let that helium escape.
Yeah, that's why a lot of dive watches have helium escape valves. But Seiko's L-shaped gasket creates such a tight seal that helium can't get into the case in the first place.
So it's like preventing the problem before it even starts.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a really clever solution.
And there are also these black-coated elements that are positioned between the lugs that hold the watch case and the bezel together.
Yeah, those elements are secured by screws from the back of the watch, and they basically clamp the bezel and the case together super tightly.
So it's like another layer of reinforcement to make sure the watch can handle the pressure.
Right. It's all about making this watch as tough as possible.
So the bezel itself is unidirectional, of course, which we'd expect for a dive watch.
Of course.
And it's made of stainless steel with a DLC coating, diamond-like carbon coating, which makes it super scratch resistant.
Yeah.
But the article does raise a question about why they didn't use a ceramic bezel.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, ceramic is pretty much the standard for high-end dive watches these days.
Right. It's known for being really scratch resistant.
Exactly, and it holds its color really well so it doesn't fade.
So why do you think they went with steel and DLC instead?
Well, it could be an aesthetic choice. Maybe they just felt like steel fit the overall look of the watch better.
Yep.
Or maybe they felt like steel offered a different kind of impact resistance compared to ceramic.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, it's definitely something that some watch enthusiasts might scratch their heads about.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Right.
Okay, so the dial is described as being inspired by the deep sea with this embossed wave pattern and then a thick lacquer over the top.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and it has a gradient blue color, too, that gets darker towards the edges.
So they're really going for that deep sea vibe.
Yeah, but does all that texture affect the legibility of the dial at all?
Apparently not. The article says that the dial is still very legible and has good contrast, which is obviously crucial for a dive watch.
Right, you need to be able to see the time at a glance underwater.
Exactly.
And the hour markers are actually molded as part of the dial, so they
Yeah.
can't really come loose.
Yeah, that's a nice touch, especially for a watch that's designed to be used in tough conditions.
And of course, it's got Lumi-Bright on hands and markers, so it'll glow in the dark.
Yeah, no dive watch would be complete without some serious lume.
And the date window is at 3 o'clock, which the article points out is a more traditional placement than some other Seiko models that might have the date of 4:30.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of watch enthusiasts prefer the 3 o'clock date window. It just looks more balanced.
Okay, so let's talk about the movement that's powering this beast,
Mm-hmm.
the Caliber 8L45.
All right, so this is a new movement from Seiko, and it's based on the Grand Seiko Caliber 9S65.
Oh, wow. So we're talking high-end stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely. It has the same number of jewels, the same dimensions, and a 72-hour power reserve.
Okay, but it's not just a rebranded Grand Seiko movement, right?
No, it's been specifically adapted for use in a dive watch, so it's going to be more robust and more reliable in harsh environments.
Makes sense. And what about the accuracy?
The claimed accuracy is -5 to +10 seconds per day, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's definitely within the acceptable range for a watch of this caliber.
Pun intended.
Okay, so the bracelet is also titanium with the same super hard coating as the case, and the links are rounded for comfort.
Yeah, and the clasp is pretty cool too. It's got a push-button release, a secure lock, and a slide adjuster, so you can easily adjust the size of the bracelet over a diving suit.
So it's got all the bells and whistles.
It does, it does.
So how much is this bad boy going to set you back?
Well, it's not cheap. It's a limited edition of 600 pieces.
Okay.
It's being released in July of 2025, and it'll cost you €5,200.
Okay, so definitely a serious investment.
It is, but for that price, you're getting a really special watch.
Yeah.
A watch that's packed with history, technology, and craftsmanship.
Yeah. So as we resurface from this deep dive, what would you say are the main takeaways about this new Seiko?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that this watch is more than just a watch. It's a celebration of Seiko's 60-year legacy in dive watches. It's taking cues from some of the brand's most iconic models, and it's combining them with cutting-edge technology and materials.
And for you, the listener, this is a chance to really understand how dive watches have evolved over time
hmm
and to see how Seiko has played a key role in that evolution.
Yeah, they've been there from the beginning, and they're still pushing the boundaries today.
And I think this new Marinemaster really raises some interesting questions about the future of high-end tool watches.
Definitely, like, how do you balance heritage and innovation?
Right.
How do you create a watch that's both a tribute to the past and a glimpse into the future?
Hmm. Yeah, that's something to think about.
It is. It is.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
I think we have.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And to you, the listener, thanks for listening.
Until next time.
Take care.
Bye.